So I'm John Jackson, John Jack, former county agent. This is my friend.
Clinton Lowe, Clintonlowe, current tractor salesman.
Fantastic. So, Clinton, as I have told you earlier, part of the Citrus Hall of Fame's mission is to tell the story of citrus. And one of the ways that we do this is oral histories. And so we just sit down and talk and we can uncover great stories. But we start, first of all, by giving us your background and where your family came from and your history of how you got involved in agriculture and how long you've been in this area and so forth. So where did your ancestors originate? And we don't have to go way back, but I mean a few generations back.
I can go back a few years. My forebears came here from Georgia after the Civil War, and I'm not certain if they were seeking fame and fortune or if they were seeking pardon and parole. But they came here and in the late 1800s and settled in the Bay Lake area, and they were in the cattle business. And then after several years, then in 1950, I was born in Leesburg to a farming family. Grandparents had a citrus grove on Atlantic Avenue here in Mascot, and I worked in that citrus grove as a young fellow, hoeing, picking oranges, and every time my granddad wanted me to do something, he'd hook the old Ferguson tractor to the disc, and I'd disc his grove. It got disced a lot more than it needed.
But you had fun, huh?
But I had fun, yes. Yep.
You know, when I do these interviews and we talk to people that grew up in citrus, the stories are almost universal in the fact that parent, grandparent, grandfather, or father got them into the grove, and they were doing this work, and at the time that they were doing it, it wasn't exactly the highlight of their life, but looking back on it, quote, it built character. And I think that's pretty well universal. You learned as a young boy and a young man, you know, the value of work and how important it was, and that you were a contributing member of the family.
That is correct. And in those days, my grandparents had their grove. It was 20-acre grove, and there were lots and lots of 20-acre grove owners back in the 50s and 60s. And when they were not working in their own grove, they farmed, and during harvest season, I remember helping my grandparents pick oranges I don't remember the harvesting crews and that kind of thing, but I remember we had to work pretty hard to pick 100 boxes of oranges a day, but we were able to do that. And as a kid, I do remember that it was pretty hard work.
Yeah. Now, what packing house was the Micheloni packing house up and running then? Did y'all haul fruit there? Or I'm not that familiar with how many packing houses there were in this area back in the 50s and early 60s.
The Micheloni packing house was active, and my grandparents hauled some fruit there, and of course, most of it wound up going to the juice plant. B&W juice plant was a very important part of the Groveland community.
Yeah, B&W was one of 5 juice plants in Lake County. It's kind of interesting. There are not 5 juice plants in the state right now, but there was many boxes of fruit were hauled in. I guess B&W was probably one of the larger, if not the largest, employer in Groveland for many years.
For many years, and during the season, I remember that my grandmother and many other women in the community, they looked forward to juice season. They wore nurses' uniforms, and in fact, there's a picture in this museum somewhere, and they looked forward to that time of work. And I don't know if they wanted to get out of the house or but I'm sure that there were many people who worked in that industry here.
Yeah, well, the great thing about the citrus industry, especially for women and second income and families. The citrus season started after school was in place, and it usually round up before school was over. So you could be a mom, you could get the kids to school, and then you could either pack or grade fruit or work in a juice plant and so forth like that. And that second income was absolutely fabulous. You know, it allowed families to do things that they might not have been able to do otherwise. So
Yes.
so what was it like growing up in Groveland?
Growing up in Groveland, this would have to be the best place in the world to grow up. I remember getting our first traffic light, but before that, the smell of the juice plant, the smell of the citrus pulp that they were cooking off for cow feed, and then orange blossom smell.
You could tell what time of the year it was. You didn't have to open your eyes. You just went outside. You said, "That's spring. I can smell the blossoms." And people can't imagine what it was like, how just overpowering it almost was when you went out. And now finding an orange blossom is kind of hard to do anymore.
Yeah, and you sure don't walk out the door and smell the blossoms.
No, not like it was.
Yeah, and Groveland, yes, it was small, but everybody here knew everybody else. And I remember falling asleep on the front porch of the lumber yard that burned down many years ago. And it was during melon shipping season. I know that doesn't have anything to do with citrus,
Oh, that's fine.
but it has something to do with Groveland. I woke up wandering around the stands, and our stand was right near the old train station that they're working on doing something with. And it was probably about midnight, and the police chief drove up and got out of his car and said, "Clinton, what are you doing wandering around here this time of night?" So anyhow, long story short, he said, "You want me to take you home or take you to your grandparents' house?" He knew a 6-year-old kid's name. He knew where my parents lived. Nobody had a telephone. And he knew where my grandparents lived.
One big family.
One big family, yes. He did not haul me off to the child protective people.
Maybe he should have.
He might should have, yeah. He didn't lock up my folks in jail. He took me to my grandparents.
You know, you mentioned the traffic light. When you had a family had a big activity, did you ever go to Orlando?
Yes, and we ran into a traffic light when we hit some shopping center over there but nothing from here to there.
Benny McLean loves to tell this story. Benny's an old timer like us in Claremont, grew up in Claremont. He said, believe it or not, when I was 10 or 12 years old and we'd go to Orlando, there was a traffic light at Highway 27. He said you could head to Orlando, and the next traffic light was at Highway 441 where the old Minute Maid office was. Can you imagine? Can you imagine how many traffic lights there are now between here and 441 in Orlando? Amazing. Well, just look at what the development's taking place here. I marvel as I come in. What do you think Dick Toole thinks now that across from Cherry Lake Tree Farm and his grove, there's that huge subdivision now that's growing in. You're no longer a little family. This is a big community now.
Yes, and mentioning Dick Toole, I went to work right out of high school, part-time for him, and after we harvested our vegetable crop, I went to see Mr. Toole, and he was always Mr. Toole to me, and I asked if he had a job, and he said, "Well, I've seen you work. Yeah, I can put you on." So many years later, he told me that, he said, "I did not need anybody," but he said, "You didn't ask what I paid. You didn't ask
What the hours
were. You said you needed a job. So I put you on, and I'm glad I did."
Yeah, he was a character, wasn't he?
Yes, he became a very good, not only was he a good friend, but he became a very good Ford tractor customer back in the day.
And You know, Clinton, a lot of these growers were frustrated entomologists, or most of them were ag engineers and loved to tinker around. You probably ran across a bunch of them that modified equipment and everything else, because you've seen probably every piece of equipment that growers have come up with. You've been around growers for years and years. So when did you get involved in equipment sales?
In 1970, when I was going to Lake Sumter, I took a job as part-time at a Ford tractor place in Leesburg. That the building is still there, south of Leesburg on 27. And so I was going to college part-time, and the owner asked me if I would like to go into sales. I was a very slow learner. I was still going to Lake Sumter in 1975. And so I said, sure, I think I'll try that. And so in 1975, I started selling to farming customers, whether it was whatever agriculture it was. And I did discover that the citrus people were they were a tight-knit bunch. It was tough to get in with the citrus people, particularly when they had been purchasing from Pounds Motor Company for so many years. That was a tough nut to crack. Yes, but people like Frank Buis with Florida Fruit Managers, he was a very good and loyal customer for many years, and so once we got the nut cracked a little tiny bit, then we were able to earn some more business. I did learn that it had more to do with the relationships than it did with what you were selling.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, back in the days, you probably didn't have to worry about contracts and all the legal formalities. If you and Frank said that's a deal and you shook hands, you didn't have to worry about anything else. It was the deal was made and everything was going to move forward.
That is correct. He would say, him for example, he would say, "Yeah, I'll take that," and it was usually 2 tractors at a time. But whatever he said was, "We'll send it," and you knew you'd have a check in the mail in a day or two.
Yeah, Brenda said we need to talk a little bit more about Dick Toole, but folks might not know, but Dick Toole was a grower and ran the hardware store here, I guess, but he was also one of these guys that liked to tinker around, and probably his most famous invention was the water cannon that he used to harvest fruit off the tree. Were you involved in that at all, or you just, like the rest of us, just marveled at what he came up with?
Well, I had just started working at the hardware store then, so I did get to go out and witness the water cannon, and that was a good invention, but it sure did take a lot of water.
Yeah, Dick was a local here that everybody knew, and he was. I was involved in Dick in many different operations, but when it came to mechanical harvesting, we would loosen the fruit on the tree and try to figure out how to remove it. Some people had a shaker, other people had a wind machine, and Dick decided he was going to knock it off with a water. And so he had a traveling nozzle that pulled a big flexible hose, and he would up and down that tree and just blast all the fruit off of it, and probably leave an inch of water on the ground, and you had to let it dry out before you could come in and rake it up. So, but there were so many people like that around it. This area I can remember coming, and Clyde Purrier was one that I dealt with quite a bit, and he had some groves and so forth. But are there any other folks come to mind that that once you got to know them, that they became more than just a customer, they became a friend?
Many of those names. One name that comes to mind is Duke Crittenden, and when his foreman called me to to come down and they wanted to purchase several tractors. So he called me down, the foreman called me down. I forget his name at the time, but anyhow, Mr. Crittenden walked in and he introduced me, and I said, Mr. Crittenden, it's nice to meet you. Hopefully I can earn your business. And he said, name's Duke, son, and you treat me right and I'll treat you right. So I got to know him and he became a friend. This was after they had their office and such was right here on Crittenden Street, named after his business there, named after him. And then I never could get in with High Acres, unfortunately.
Well, that probably was good.
Yeah, that could have been a good thing. Yes.
Because I don't think that you would have probably gotten the same kind of reception, but that's good.
And then another one was ABC Citrus Caretaking.
Skip Wilson.
Skip Wilson.
Bill Lennon. Yeah.
Yes. And in fact, Bill is a customer and friend of mine to this very day. And I have, when I started selling in '75, I still have customers, third generation customers, some of them, that started doing business with back in those days.
I'm one of your customers. You
Yes.
sold me a John Deere
Yes,
Gator.
you are.
Best investment I ever made.
Yes, and I remember one time I had you had made arrangements with me to have a couple of tractors and such at the Ag Center, and I took off on vacation and forgot to make those arrangements for you.
John High bailed you out.
Yes, he did. I've had a lot of people bail me out over the years.
Well, you've traveled around so much and became a part of the farming operation of so many people, and the reason that from what I can see, is that you took a personal interest in them, and it was not about making the sale. It was about seeing what their need was and how you could help them out. And you didn't try to sell them something that you didn't think they needed, or you made it work for them. And I think that's what it used to be like. And how many times did you go to Jack's Barbecue and meet a customer and make a sale there or either at the farm,
Quite often we would meet at Jack's Barbecue. Was that was a legend in Mineola, and you're absolutely right. We developed those relationships, but we also went in with the idea that I'm here to help you solve a problem, and whether it's a piece of equipment or a tractor or whatever. Another one that became a good customer and friend was Busby and Wilkins had they bought their groves and planted groves down near West Palm, and Mac Seeley and became a good customer of mine. Mac passed away, I guess, last year, I believe it was, and he was a good friend and customer for a good number of years. The Edge family, they became friends and customers, and Rex Wynn and Kermit Clay, when they needed a tractor, or a power unit to irrigate the grove, they'd always give me a call. And Blandford Groves, Bill Bland, and
oh, there's a name.
Yeah, and and Mr. Bland always had these German Shepherds that when you'd pull up in the yard, you had to make sure that somebody was out there. Otherwise, those dogs were going to talk to you a little bit.
Yeah. Now, Bill Bland was a grower and rancher up in the Mount Dora area, and his father, W.T. Bland, the library is named after him in Mount Dora, and Mr. Bland Sr. made his money in banking, and then he moved there. But Bill was a true character. He was the kind of guy that when you met him, you thought he was the toughest, meanest guy in the world, and after you got to know him, he was just a damn softy with this front that he put on. Family contributed to so many operations. In fact, his trust is helping me build a citrus barn over in Barberville. So anyway, all these great names. So You also did a little farming yourself, right? So uh, how involved are you now? You used to do a lot of pick at the farm here.
We did that, but the way, of course, selling farm machinery, always close to farming, close to citrus, and I married a young lady back in 1969, and her family had been in citrus since the late 1920s, and so they stayed in the citrus business. She and I married and moved to Leesburg, and then when we had opportunity to come back to Groveland, we purchased the old, they called it the Matson place for many years. All the old timers are gone, so it's no longer known as the Matson place, but in '78 we moved back to Groveland, and in '87, after all the freezes, Ann and I were able to purchase the grove that's around our house, and we pruned it up, shaped it up, cleaned it up, got it all, reset the grove like the rest of these citrus growers in Lake County and other counties. And sure enough, in 1989, along comes another freeze. And guess what? We replanted again, just like all the other growers in Lake and surrounding counties.
Genetic defect, I believe.
Yep. It's a character flaw that we have. So, and then along comes, once the freezes decided to quit coming to call, then it was sour root decline, and then it was diaprepes.
Canker.
And then it was canker. And you know what? We battled through every bit of that until greening. And you came out and had me pull up a couple of trees, and back in the day when we had to worry about some other kind of bug, and you said, yep. And I managed to keep the grove irrigated, and it was a very nice grove. Small, yes, 20 acres. And it kept me busy and off the streets, and kept me out of trouble.
But you're still selling equipment.
I was still selling equipment, yes. When we replanted the first time, I'd work all day and then get on the water truck and water resets until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd sleep in. I didn't get up until 5 or 5:30 and get up and go to work. And then along comes greening, and that took us out of the citrus business like it did many others.
Well, did you have some pick vegetables down here one time?
We did. Then we went into the blueberry farming business, and no longer have any blueberries, but we established a very nice U-pick operation, U-pick vegetables as well, and now we U-pick tourism is about it.
Agritourism.
Agritourism, yes.
Yeah, well, it's things have evolved, and you know, we started off and we thought that when Mickey Mouse showed up that it was going to completely change this area, and Mickey came in, and Claremont, Groveland, Winter Garden hardly changed. Citrus groves were still there, and people said, well, gosh, why you have all that citrus? Well, if you were a citrus grower like Dan McKinnon, you know, and you're making $1,500 an acre, why would you want to sell to a developer, you know, for $5,000 an acre? Everything was great until December 24th, 1983, and anybody involved in agriculture here remembers that night very clearly, because it took a while, but it changed this whole area dramatically in one night. And the groves froze, and so many people were absentee owners. They weren't like you, and so the caretaker or the co-op says, well, you're ready to replant, right? You saved some money that we sent you every year for the grove, and sadly, not many of them had. And so this area started changing, didn't it, when after the freezes and didn't have money to replant, and we started seeing the tremendous changes taking place here.
No, it started changing dramatically. I remember I think it was Christmas Day, 1989. I was out in the grove early the morning of the freeze, and unstopping nozzles, and that water was so cold. And Dick Toole, I was still selling Ford tractors at the time, and Dick Toole had just a couple of weeks previous ordered 2 tractors, and I was out in the grove working on the irrigation system, and he stopped by to say, "Clinton, I probably got bad news for you." And I said, "Well."
You probably aren't the only one.
Yeah, he said, I'm going to have to cancel the order on those 2 tractors. And I said, you know what, I kind of halfway understand that. So that particular freeze, at the time, my wife and I, in partnership with a friend and relative, operated an irrigation supply store in Mineola, right next to where Donut King is. And so not only did we have an orange grove that was frozen out again, we had an irrigation supply business that relied a lot on agricultural customers. So there went that. So we had to close that business, and I had just given notice at the Ford tractor place that I was going to change brands. So January 2nd of '90 is when I started selling John Deere farm machinery. But I sure picked a good time to do all of those things as a result of that last freeze.
Yeah, it's amazing how how people really survived, how resilient they were. And even Lake County, for example, to have such a tremendous dependence on citrus dollars, tax dollars coming in, and to lose all of that almost overnight. But like you said, we survived the freezes, but this greening is, I thought that if we invested as much money as we have in research, we'd have solved the greening problem, but we haven't. And I marvel at the people who are persisting. Came down 19 today, and IMG or Cherry Lake or Michael Sallin or whatever his operation, there's some nice looking groves still there, young groves I guess they've got. That old grapefruit grove, I don't know if the grapefruit grove is still there, if they replanted or what, but I can remember when Michael came and got started with Ed Barton and bought that grove and was in the business, and look where it's gone now, all those trees and everything else. It's just, it's amazing how people have found a way to survive somehow.
Yes, it is. And talking about Cherry Lake out there, I spent many, many nights with my hounds fox hunting in those groves when it was there was nothing but orange grove out there, and you could turn loose your hounds and not bother a soul, and listen to them run foxes all night long, and then get to church Sunday morning and wonder if you're going to be able to keep your eyes open. This better be a good sermon, otherwise I'm going to be sleeping over here. And mentioning Cherry Lake, another person that I never could get in good with was Doc Hoosman at Apshawa Groves. He would say, "We are Deutsch people," and he meant it too. So,
well, Dr. Hoosman, he was one of a kind, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
He was the first grower that I met when I started in 1968, and I arrived at his farm. See, I'm telling the story now, but I arrived at his farm at the office, Clinton, and he was there in those riding jodhpurs that he always wore, the pants. And there was a 7,000-gallon tanker truck in the yard, and oil was coming out of the tanker, and he had a 30-gallon drum there of emulsifying agent. He was making his own spray oil. and he proceeded to give me the lesson of how much he cost for the oil and how much it cost for this and how much it was here and how the other growers were paying this. And he was like that, but he's always asking questions and seeking things and just, you know, one of those guys that was never-ending stories. And I remember when grapefruit price went to $1 a box, he said, "Jackson, it's almost like stealing." And he grew some beautiful grapefruit they hauled out to Lakeland and everything. Well, and now Apshaw is a beautiful subdivision. I wonder if that stone house is still down there by the lake. I haven't been down there in so many years to visit. But, you know, Clinton, things were such that, that when people needed a hand, you'd help them out and so forth. And I needed a rototiller to rototiller my yard. And I called you, said, "Come on down and get one." Came down and borrowed a rototiller and used a friend of mine's tractor to do a rototilling up. And that was the kind of way it was, wasn't it? People helped out each other and jumped in and whenever you could to make it a little bit easier.
Yes, they did. And mentioning becoming friends, Buddy Oswalt was one of my earlier Ford tractor converts, and Buddy was he recommended me to his friends and fellow citrus growers. Because of Buddy, I was able to do business with Claude Smoke, and although Claude has moved up into the Steinhatchee area, he still does business with me.
Does he?
Yes, he does. And Buddy's sons did business with me. Buddy passed away a few years ago, yep. And they were good friends and customers in that area, in the Clermont area.
Fabulous family. Of course, Buddy's brother, Tom, or Tommy to people here, was my colleague as a county agent in Bartow. I stole so many ideas from him, and he was a little different than me. I was a little bit more outspoken than Tom. He was much more intellectual than I was, but we worked great together. My weather program I stole from him. He'd been doing that for a few years. And then, of course, Diane married Charlie Russ, the hedging and topping guy. They still live in Clermont. So, but you don't recognize Clermont. I had an experience trying to get a citrus barn at the Heritage Village in Clermont, and they didn't want an ugly citrus barn in that beautiful Heritage Village that they had. And I'm thinking, you know, citrus was this area for 125 years. And sadly, the people that are here now have no concept of that. They don't know that you could see 7 million citrus trees from the citrus tower. They didn't know there were 3 or 4 packing houses around here that employed women to pack and grade the fruit, and with the economic backbone of the community, dollars flowed through it. It's just, it's a lost story, but we got to keep sharing it, and I'm hoping that people will do that. So when are you going to quit selling tractors and retire? They're waiting. I know the answer to that before I even ask the question.
This year, someday, not today, but this year could possibly be my last full-time year. Going forward, the Fields family that own the 3 John Deere store chain that I work with, they have said they would like for me to stay on part-time, take care of the customers that I have cultivated and taken care of for a good number of years now. So I'm going to stay active.
Well, you know, I can tell you from personal experience, retirement isn't all that great. If you think that you're going to stay busy fishing and picking around the house and everything else, you're going to get bored to death. So, and you've got so many customers out there that you just go visit for the fun of it, not that you're going to sell them anything, just to see them and everything. And I got a couple projects I'm working on that you can help me with. So you'll be involved in a lot of activities, and so you'll know when the time comes to kind of move in one direction or the other direction. Brenda's nodding. She's quote retired, right, sitting here working. So those of us who have been active, involved, you'll still keep going on. It'll just be a different direction.
It'll be a little bit scaled back, and my wife, who is probably sitting over in that corner over there, and
She's shaking her
she's giving you some dirty looks right now, I'll bet. She is the third generation to grow up on the farm, small farm where we currently live, and seated next to her is my daughter-in-law, and she and her husband would be the fourth generation, and seated behind her and my wife would be my grandchildren, and they are the fifth generation to grow up on that farm, and we're facing some changes, and there are going to be some changes, not only for me, but for our farm as well. But hopefully they'll be able to maintain some farming activity going forward some distance in the future.
You know, it's amazing how they can change direction but not lose the heart of it. And I tell this story almost every time I do an interview because we get to this point. I did the career day in Park my middle school in Leesburg. Anyway, so you know when you're competing with other people in the career day, not many kids were interested in agriculture, but so I'd have the kids come in. The last period, the kids all came in. My first question, though, is what's agriculture? And they would say that's driving a tractor or feeding an animal. They came in. This young lady was sitting in the front row, looked like she could go to work for Sun Bank or whatever then. I asked, what's agriculture? She raised her hand, and I called on her. She never missed a beat, Clinton. She said, a way of life. Now, you know, I would have hired her the next day, the young lady that had insight like that. And it is a way of life, and it's passed on. And, you know, you got involved, and the family will get involved. But it can move in different directions, you know. And look what's happening with Benny McLean when they were growing citrus, and now they're in the organic business and have some other things and processed products and everything. So it'll still be here, but it's just going to be entirely different than what it was when you were young and growing up in the business.
Yes, and mentioning that, I think Robert Frost said it best when he said, I think the quote is like this: "We were the land's before the land was ours."
Excellent. It's been fun. We probably overlooked a bunch of things, and we could have gone another different direction, but I appreciate it. It's always been a pleasure, you know. And you can deal with people, and I know that you've been successful because you love what you do, and you love the people that you deal with. And you can go out to someone like a Duke Crittenden, and not only do you know him, but you know what his family situation is like and everything else. And so we've had successful and enjoyable careers, and we'll keep on keeping on until we finally decide that it's time to sit in that rocking chair and let that next generation go out there. I let them do all the hard work and heavy lifting right now, but it's fun.
It has been fun, and I appreciate the visit with you today. And I remember when Roy Bronson used to tell JL when he got ready for a new piece of equipment. I started pretty young. He'd say, "Call that boy up." He never could remember my name. He'd say, "JL, call that boy up and tell him to come see me." So memories like that last a long time.
Yeah, they do, and there's some great people around here. Thank you.